Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Mustard Movie Club podcast. I'm Mustard, aka Kyle, and joining me today is one of my many co-hosts and guests that will frequent the show. And this character will probably be the most common and frequent. So please introduce yourself, Jad.
Thank you, Mustard. It's an honor and pleasure to be here on the show with you today. And, very excited that you're doing this. I think it's a long time coming. I think that we have a lot of things to discuss, a lot of viewpoints to take, and yeah, just excited to be here and looking forward to getting the conversation started and having this be, a continuous process for 2023.
Well, as you're going to see, folks, Jad is very passionate about movies. Just so happens, unfortunately, he's very passionate about bad movies, which is probably a great counterbalance to my passion about actual mostly good movies. But someone has to represent the people, and while far from having any of the admirable qualities of the common man, he does have the taste of an absolute peasant, and will hopefully provide the right back and forth banter. Otherwise, if I'd pick someone with actual good taste, it would kind of just be us sitting around jerking off over certain films, and no one really wants to listen to that. I don't think so.
Hey, there's beauty in the absolute worst, and then you gotta enjoy it and you gotta find it. So that's what I'm here for.
Listen, I agree with that sentiment to a certain degree, but you take it too far, man. You take it too far. And I'm confident we're going to see that pretty soon as we go through what we loved about 2022. But before we do that, I just want to give a little history about how this podcast sort of started in its infancy. And it was really just two kids going to the movies, usually once a week after school or maybe on Sunday night, spending their allowance on the one thing they love the most. We saw anything and everything except for usually horror. We kind of stuck our nose up at that genre, but podcast was really just me and this one friend talking about a movie, out back in the parking lot, having a smoke, or even, before I smoked, waiting for a ride to pick us up at the mall. And honestly, it was great. It was one of the things I, loved the most about my youth. And, much like music in your younger days, you just consume as much content as you can. And that way you learn what you like and you learn what you don't. And it gives you context for this big, wide world of cinema that spans, 50 plus 100 years. And, you figure out what's new and provocative and what's old and rehashed and boring. And so this kid, he's one of my best friends, was and still kind of is. And one day he just kind of stopped caring about movies, and he was a little bit jaded and didn't get that excited anymore, and got interested in rock climbing and butterfly cataloging and other weird shit. So I had to replace him. And we still talk, but rarely about movies. And honestly, it makes him pretty much a garbage human being to me. But I do love him, and deep down I know that this kid, that was passionate about movies, still exists somewhere inside of him. Maybe one day we'll have him on the show and we can berate him endlessly and try to find out what shards of that love for films.
Who are you talking about?
I'm not gonna name drop. I'll let him introduce. If you don't know who it is, I feel like you should know. But he can,
Butterfly.
he just doesn't really catalog butterflies. But anyway, so I couldn't really replace him despite my many efforts, because, people are unreliable and inconsistent. And so instead I replaced them with this revolving door of people, and thus became kind of my own version of the Mustard Movie Club, where I would send out screenings and invites and, kind of like this Tinder rotation of where I would just fuck whoever was willing to come out with me that night. And most reliable person in that rotation ended up becoming Mr. Jad here. So I blasted his ass on a regular basis, figuratively, not literally. We're not that kind of movie going couple. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but eventually, in the end, it pretty much became only Jad, and we started movie watching exclusively. And I hypothesize, actually, I fucking know that it's because he's super lazy, and I did all the standing in line or waiting online, getting all the tickets, best premieres, best seats, All
I
you
think
do.
it's important to give some background in terms of what that arrangement was, because I think it was a really good arrangement, at least from my side, and I think it kind of um, helped you continue, or even me continue kind of having a partner to go watch movies with. And I think it was an arrangement that suited both of us, and it just worked out perfectly. You would go and you would be kind of, first in line, get the tickets, the right seats, and I would just tag along. I mean that's really kind of what I did, but because you did that, it just made it so much easier to say, yeah, I'll be there, because realistically, all you're doing is asking me to show, which you would think a lot of people would take you up on that, but they didn't, and I don't know why, but it was a good arrangement, and because of that, I think we saw a lot in the theater, whereas a lot of time when I talk to people, they end up watching it at home, and then it's not the same experience, and I think that what you did there, and we had that going before kids and family and whatnot, was I'll always look back at it as time that was almost well spent in the love for cinema, because without that, I don't, like, my the amount of movies I watch in a year is what, 50% less, maybe more, right? So that's my input on that.
Interesting. I think probably, every now and again when I pay up front and I forget to ask you for the money, and you probably got a free screening out of it. That probably played into it too a little bit. But no, I always looked at you as like, you're Don Cheadle, War Machine, like came in Iron Man 2 replacing bitch ass Terrence Howard, and here you are, like, through Endgame and beyond, although, like, we haven't seen a movie together in several months, and I think, like, we're probably nearing the end, like, if we haven't already, like, maybe there's one or two movies in there a year for the next little bit, but hopefully our smoke outside the theater is now replaced by this podcast, and we can kind of continue that on in a different way now that we have families and lives and kids and other more important things to deal with. Do you remember what the first movie we saw was?
No, but I feel like I think it would be as early as probably around 2005. Maybe, yeah, 2005. It would definitely be after high school. I don't remember if we went. Maybe we did. Maybe we watched the movie in high school, in the sense that we may have watched like either a Lord of the Rings or a Matrix, or maybe something like that. But yeah, no.
I think it was probably in and around 2002, 2003, if I had to guess. Maybe I'm mixing things up, but it was like when my love affair with IMAX started. IMAX, it was like Attack of the Clones, Matrix Reloaded at the 70 millimeter screen at Coliseum, now Cineplex Mississauga or whatever it's called. I don't know if you saw any of those. 2005 was like Revenge of the Sith era, and then there was probably like a break in between there, but I actually don't know.
I remember. So it's funny you bring up Revenge of the Sith. I believe what I did was, it had been too long that Revenge of the Sith had been out, and I walked into Coliseum by myself, and I ended up watching. I don't know if it was 3 or 2, but I was there for about 9 hours, and I watched Batman Begins and Revenge of the Sith, because I think that they would have been out around the same time. Now, I don't know if Doom was thrown in there, but I also remember doing a doubleheader with Doom, and I don't know if that was around the same time. But
Doom is 2005.
Okay.
For what it's worth, I don't recall when in 2005 it came out, but I mean those are all 2005 films. So
and I looking back at that time, just I know you did this as well, but the idea now to literally walk in at like noon to a theater and watch like two screenings or three screenings back to back and like leave at 9, like I can't even fathom that, but did it back in the day. So
Yeah, I have fond memories of doing stuff like that, and now it's like the only time I really do it is occasionally during the film festival, and it's like on one hand it's just because it's a time thing, and you gotta, if you want to be able to see a certain amount of films, that's what you have to do. But now it's like you got to give the films a certain amount of time to breathe. Otherwise, they kind of just blend into all
I agree.
one thing. And
Yeah,
I think sometimes you dilute it like that and make things more forgettable,
yeah,
especially if they're not particularly impressive films. Like if it's one of those films for the ages, sure, it's going to stand out. But it's hard to process a film if you don't get that time after to like really just sit and take it in and give yourself a chance to like, what did you actually think about it? There's very few films that I've made my mind up on completely by the time the credits roll. It's really a process of might even take me a few days of like, how long is it in my head, and going like back and forth over some of the choices and decisions and story that I really sort of come to terms with. That's not even including once it gets life on DVD and streaming, where you might watch it a second, third time and feel completely different about it after that. So
yeah. I mean, the other thing was also the fact that at that time, if I could watch a movie for like $9.50 on a Tuesday, out of that $9.50, you'd be getting like 3 movies out.
See,
And
I was always like I was never like afraid of stealing, because I would steal certain things, but I didn't want to steal from the movies. I'm that kid that would go to the movie at 12 and walk out and go buy another ticket and then go back in at 2, and that was too when AMC like movie watcher points. I wanted to get my points and I wanted to have it in like my history list of like films. I'm swiping the card and everything. So it's like if I saw 2 or 3 movies, odds are I paid for probably most of them, maybe not all of them, but like I was that guy. Now,
yeah,
like you gotta like reserve your seat, and even though it's not going to be like an empty screening, like the idea of me going and being like in a movie and like getting settled, like on my popcorn, I'm all locked in, and then like 5 minutes into the movie, someone comes in and they're like, "You're in my seat," like fuck, like that would just be like top 5 nightmare scenario.
yeah.
Like,
No, for sure, for sure. I mean, back in the day, it was pretty lax. Like I remember, like walking in at 12, there's nobody there, and you buy your ticket, and then it's like you've entered almost like an amusement park, right? Like because once you're in, especially Courtney Park AMC, I don't know if you remember that, but you kind of walk in through the front door. The person swipes your first movie ticket, and then they kind of forget about you. And you're just and sometimes there'd be like a half an hour 40-minute break between a movie, and that was the time to hit up the arcades that they had still going, right? So it was a for a solo adventure, especially if you kind of love the art of cinema. Though for me, yeah, forget about kind of like trying to steal from the movie theater, but like to walk in at 12, spend that $9.50 and have this incredible 9-hour day full of movies and video games and whatnot was a fun memory.
no, and it's a great point about the solo experience, because now it's like honestly, most things I'm like I go myself because my wife can't really go, because then like we need a babysitter, and like that's difficult on a weeknight, and so like on a Monday night at 10 o'clock or something like that, and it's just it's you alone with the film and your thoughts, instead of it being this social thing, which obviously with Mustard Movie Club I enjoyed, and especially like the before and after when you would talk about it, and it was good excuse to see people. But it's like when it's just you in that movie alone and you're locked in and committed, it's like it's a different kind of thing. And I would hazard to say it might be my favorite way of consuming film.
Yeah, no, it's definitely special. I think that if I tell people that the general population will look at me like I'm nuts for doing something like that. But no, absolutely, there's something definitely special about that, and seen so many movies. But I think on the flip side, there's something absolutely special about seeing, like, for example, Top Gun 2. I think I ended up getting 11 people out, right? And I got that in IMAX, the row that we always get. It's like that row is like mathematically positioned as like the best row, best viewing angle, leg room. I booked that entire row out, and the funny part was I was so excited for that movie that I bought the tickets before I had the people, right? And I originally bought 6 tickets, and I said, okay, you know what? I think I can get 6 people to go, and I got 6 people to commit like that. And then I was like, okay, well, if I got 2 more, let me buy the adjacent tickets. And then before I knew it, that like entire row was covered, and going to the theater and watching Top Gun 2. Span ended up coming out. One of my other friends, family friends who I hadn't seen since we watched. Well, sorry, I'd seen him before after that, but the last time we watched Top Gun was he was at my house and we watched the original Top Gun, and 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 lightning struck the house and the entire movie turned off. And his last memory, or one of his most fondest memories of Top Gun, is watching it in my house with when kind of like just lightning struck our house and there was a plant that went on fire and every electronic was kind of fried. And he came out, and yeah, no, it was an incredible experience, and I think there's tremendous joy to watching it with a group of people as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, one of the you know one of the few things I like enjoy to do, as much as I hate like YouTube videos and like reaction shit and all of that, it's like watching Endgame like reaction videos in the theater when like the portal sequence is on. It's like, oh man, like I would never want to go back and like have that be a solo experience like that. Similarly like with No Way Home, when like Andrew and Toby came on, like you need that a little bit.
You do.
I'm surprised that Top Gun had that level of electricity, but then again, I've been surprised by Top Gun all year. To be honest, like I saw it a few months ago. I was like way late on the train, and might be my most overrated movie of 2022. Like, and I say this like I like the movie. Like I didn't not like it. Like it was enjoyable. It was well done for like a 30-year-old sequel, or however many years it was. But like, there's people out there being like best picture, like crazy fucking like statements about it. I'm just like, where is this coming from? Like how? Like I don't know how the movie got the momentum that it did. And I don't know how that screening would have been so electric, but I believe you if you say that. Obviously,
it wasn't. I don't even think it's a screening that was electric, and there's part of me that definitely goes. And I would definitely put it, like, I can't think of another movie, but I would definitely put it in the category of best movie for 2022 for myself. But I think a lot of that has to do with yes, the movie was good, but I think a lot of it has to do with the love affair for the first movie. And I think if you didn't have that love affair for the first movie, you were like, hey, it's a pretty good movie. But if you had any sort of emotional attachment to the first movie and then you saw this, I think that's where it kind of took it to that like whole nother level. And I think there's a lot of people because I don't even know when what was it was 90, it had to be 1980.
I think it was 89.
Top Gun, the original 86, right? So 86, I would have probably watched the movie when I was maybe 10, 8 or 10, right? Like I would have watched it early 90s for the first time. And it would have been maybe 4 years old or 6 years old by that time that I would have watched it. But over the course of the 90s, I had a love affair with that movie. Just, I mean, you're a kid, you're 8, 10. It's a fighter pilot. It's Tom Cruise, and it kind of and then it became obviously a cult classic. What it became, and then that hype leading up to it, and then the fact that it was the movie itself wasn't like this. Like it can stand on its own two legs without the original being there to a certain degree, right? It can be like it is a good movie on its own, but when you add the nostalgia and you add all that emotion, it kind of like escalates it, right? Like that battle with Maverick and kind of letting go of Goose. It was almost like the audience or you had to let go of that. You know, it wasn't even Tom Cruise letting go of that trauma. It was you as the audience with Tom Cruise letting go of that trauma. Like that's the level they got to.
I get that to a certain extent. I do. Like I'm a whore for nostalgia in many ways, but even a movie that like has my whole heart in that way that I just loved, I wouldn't be like best picture of the year. Kind of like it's a different conversation, and somehow it's weasel its way into that. I don't know how it's managed to do that and like, you know, become like the 10th highest grossing film of all time. Like it's just, I don't know, it's just weird that it's on that list, but you know, I'm glad people like it. And you know, it was a impressive IMAX experience with the way they shot it. And I know, you know, Tom Cruise, is weird a cat as he is, like, you know, put a lot of love and effort into like doing that film the right way. And it was enjoyable, but anyway. So we're going to talk, you know, kind of our top 10. Obviously, we haven't seen everything yet, so there's a bunch of gaps for both of us. You know, I haven't seen Babylon, I haven't seen Bones and all. You know, a handful of other films that normally I'll see in January. As you know, it's early January at the time of this recording, but I think. How many films did you see this year? Because I look back on it and it's like I look back on the last couple of years because I actually track everything like in an app where it's like it's called Just Watch and you can show it as like I want to see or I've seen, and so you can go through and see. And I generally find I watch about 50 some odd movies a year, like new releases, like not rewatching older films or classics or whatever. So one new film a week, pretty much. And so, like, from that, you know, I'd probably say, like, going to the theater is still incredibly important to me, and probably close to half of those were in the theater. You know, it's probably like I go to the theater once to 2 times a month, and the other, you know, are on streaming, and then you add a few extra either in the summer or during the film festival time where I catch a few extra. But how many films did you see this year, for context?
I would, it would definitely be less than what you're talking about. You know, the theater, it would probably be the big ones that I ended up seeing in the theater, the Marvels, and Top Gun, and some of the big ones. A lot of it ended up being on the Netflix releases and whatnot, and then I obviously saw my share of the bad movies, right? As well. Just and have you seen Moonfall?
I have seen a part of it. So I think my wife had it on and I watched a bit of it and I was like, I was going to watch it and then I caught some of it and I didn't go back.
Oh, it's really bad. It's really bad. Like I mean, I watched it to the end, only because the concept was fascinating, but it's terrible. It's definitely bad. What else? Did you watch Samaritan?
No.
Yeah. So it was this movie with Sylvester Stallone where he's a superhero, but he's like a hidden superhero. And another movie that I would recommend. It's actually pretty decent for a superhero movie. Very formulaic, but pretty decent. I mean, nothing. You're not going to walk out of it like it's great, but it's definitely one of those kind of like, you know, you put it on a random Sunday just to kind of turn your mind off.
And you saw those in the theater?
No.
No, okay.
I would watch them at home, much to the dismay of my wife Saba, and she'd just be like, "Well, why are you watching this?" And I'd be like, it's something that has to be seen.
It's an interesting point in terms of like, the state of the industry and how you vote with your dollar and with your time. And over the holidays, me and my brother were going to see Avatar.
Mhm.
And it was like, okay, like let's go do it. And then it was kind of like, well, maybe we go see Babylon, right? Like I love
Okay.
Damien Chazelle and Whiplash and La La Land, like fell in love. And it was kind of like this debate, and I was debating with myself, and it was like I convinced my brother to go from Avatar to Babylon, and then I was trying to convince him back. And it's like, how should I vote? Because realistically, like I knew I wasn't going to get to the theater for probably another few weeks, and by the time I get there, it's like Babylon's gone. Maybe Avatar will still be kicking around, but it's like on one hand, you want to support. A Babylon needs more support than an Avatar does. But Babylon is a film that I could watch in my 80-inch screening room at home and probably like get close to the experience. Whereas if you don't see Avatar on the big screen, I feel like you're missing out on 10 years of Cameron's life in terms of what he put into that. And they're both around 3 hours, and it was like a later screening, and it was just like I was really humming and hawing over and I ended up going with Avatar. And
I haven't seen Avatar, but I'm assuming what are your, without revealing any specific plot points, what are your thoughts on Avatar 2?
I mean, it was perfectly fine in that it kept my attention, and I generally enjoyed the experience. I would say I enjoyed it slightly less than Avatar 1. And really, like, the annoying part about Avatar for me is like, take its simplistic nature story wise aside, but it's a cool experience to see that technology. But when Cameron finished Avatar 1, and like the 3D then was new, right? It was like, whoa, this is a new thing. And I remember him saying, like, by the time we get to this, it's like you're not even going to need the glasses, right? So it's like this is one of the most prolific filmmakers of our generation, and he's devoted essentially like 2 decades of his life to creating these movies. And it's like the one thing I found myself thinking at the end of it, I'm like, is this worth what he's sacrificed for? And it's like the tech from what it was then to then, it's like it doesn't feel noticeable. I know that it is noticeably improved. And I'm sure for many years from now, like maybe I'll look back on it differently, but it feels like getting Way of the Water and the next Fire movie, and if there's a 4 or whatever, it just feels like, how cool would it have been if we would have got an Aliens, a Terminator, and a Last Action Hero instead? As far as like his legacy, it's like, is this the best use of Cameron as a filmmaker? And I'm kind of leaning towards no. I'm not entirely like decided, but it's like I don't know. Like I don't think I would put Avatar 2 in the top 5 of his films, and like we had to wait a decade for it, right? And now we know there's another like 5+ years devoted to this same thing too, right? So
It's interesting with Cameron. It's interesting with Cameron though. Like every time he's done a movie, he's pushed technology forward, and he's really created something that you've almost never seen before, right? Like if you look at T2 to this day, and that movie was what, 94? I think it was 94
it was 92
or 95, 92. Yeah, I think it was 92. I think you're right. It was 92. Like the stunts in that movie, they hold.
Sorry to interrupt.
91, yeah. Right? The stunt work in that movie still holds. Like you can watch it, and yeah, some of the CGI aspect might be dated, but because he did stunts live, and he did stunts kind of the old school way, where everything kind of was recorded without computer graphics, and it was really kind of the only computer graphics at most at that point was T1000, but it was groundbreaking, and it still holds weight today. And then you look at, for example, the rest of his work, Titanic, Avatar, when the first one came out, it was always okay. You know what? I'm not making a movie unless I'm pushing some edge of technology. And it was almost he almost became um, he almost became I would say related to the fact that okay, you know what? Um, Something's going to change. There's almost innovation where you're going to change something in movies and how movies done before you put this movie out and movies done after you put this movie out, things change, right? And I feel like that's what he did with Avatar. And then and not having seen Avatar 2, I don't know whether this specific movie does that again, right? And maybe it doesn't have the same impact because after Avatar 2 and the way he would have done computer graphics and the way he would have changed, I'm assuming that we've seen a lot of movies since then that have he's essentially paved the way for that type of CGI to occur on screen. And we're almost desensitized to it. And unless he does something groundbreaking new, rather than just kind of an improvement on the old, and that's what I'm feeling like this is. It's almost like an improvement on the old. Um, um, I don't know. I think that's why it's getting the kind of um, lackluster. And I think it's still doing pretty well as a movie, but not to the expectations that would have been set by Avatar, the first one, which
I mean, it's essentially fucking impossible. Like, I think we had to make like over $2 billion to like generate a profit, which I think is probably a little bit overzealous.
Yeah.
It don't make a profit, but when you dump that much in, it's just like, what are you hoping to get out of it?
Yeah,
I
don't think he leads. I don't think he leads. I think he leads with technology as opposed to, I think it would be great for my legacy to make another sequel to, let's say, Last Action Hero or something like that. Or Terminator, or I think he leads with, where is technology heading and what can I do with this and what is the best story to tell with this? And I think he leads with that conversation as opposed to, hey, it would be really cool if we did another Indiana Jones like Lucas would do, or there is still a story to tell. So it's funny how it's an interesting point because it's funny how storytellers are so different across each medium, between, let's say, how Tarantino would approach a next project versus how Lucas would approach his next project versus how Cameron would approach, what am I going to do next, right? And it's interesting to see their decisions in terms of, okay, well, what matters to me as a filmmaker of what I'm going to do next, right? And then as an audience, we get to you get to sit back and go, well, why would he do that, right? Especially with like someone like Tarantino, like his project, the way he jumps, like it's almost like, he's different because he's making a movie for himself. He's like, what would I like to see, right? And you take somebody like Lucas, and he's like, well, yeah, I think there's still a chapter or something here that I want to explore within like the Indiana Jones character or saga or life, or there's still something that needs to be said. And then you look at Cameron, and he's like, okay, you know what? Where's the world heading? And what can I push to the limit with technology? And let's build a story around that. And maybe that's Avatar 2.
Yeah, no, it's just that, at what point are you like, if you're not an auteur and you're not a movie geek, it's like, what are you, just a tech geek? Like, is that, I don't know. I haven't made up my mind on it. I'm still a little torn, but I don't know. I feel and sense like he's capable of more, but maybe as a industry we'll be reaping the rewards of what he's done with Avatar 2 and 3, far beyond, and we just can't fully see it yet. But in any case, let's jump into our let's call it's not the best films. I don't want to objectively like look at it like that. It's like our favorite films or some of the ones we most enjoyed or had the best experience with. So I think what we can do is I think we both have a list of 10. We can go 10-10 and 9-9 and go through. So my 10th film, I had to have some kind of popcorn, blockbuster on here. And honestly, my favorite one of the year was Jurassic World Dominion.
I haven't seen it.
Really?
No. I haven't seen it, but I'm literally waiting. First, I was waiting for it to come on. First, I was waiting for it to come on Disney, not Disney, but I was waiting for it to come on one of those scenarios where I can kind of rent it for like $6.99 on like an Apple TV type of scenario. I don't know if it's there or not, but I'm absolutely with you on that one. I think I will automatically enjoy it. That's definitely my jam.
It's objectively a bad movie. Like, I'm not going to sit here and defend it, but it's like it's the right blend of nostalgia with mix of dinosaurs. It's the best for me of the neutral. I didn't like Jurassic World, right? So if you like Jurassic World, you might feel very differently. But it was what I thought Jurassic World should have attempted to be. And I don't know. I generally enjoyed it. I went by myself. I ended up sitting, it was a sold out theater. I ended up sitting next to a guy who was also by himself, and we chatted, and it was on opening night, and I don't know, it was fun, and I'm a huge fan of that franchise, even throughout many of the bad choices along the way. And I'm just like, there weren't any Star Wars films this year, but there's no Marvel on my list, there's no Top Gun, there's no nothing like that, but Jurassic Park, it snuck in there at the back end.
Let's stick with 5. I think 10 is quite a bit. Give me your top 5 movies.
Well, if it was top 5, then I wouldn't have included Jurassic World Dominion. I could say that. So if you are only comfortable going to 5, I can rip through my 10 to 5 now, and then we can catch up. So,
let's go through your.
There's certain movies that are on here that, again, it's some people might turn their noses up a little bit, but for me, number 9, Deep Water. Anyone that knows me, I'm a huge Ben Affleck fan. He rarely does wrong for me. I'm not saying he's perfect, but I find him to be a very captivating actor, writer, director, and him and Ana de Armas, it was sexy, it was unpredictable, it was perplexing, but I just really found myself glued to both of those characters and wanting to find out what was going to happen. And it's got, terrible reviews and terrible ratings, but I don't know. I think we forget the importance of movies like that in the pantheon, and I wanted to recognize that.
I think it's one of those movies where a lot of times there's bad movies, and what I love about even the bad movies is certain actors. I just love watching them on screen, and they could be in absolute trash. And Affleck is one of those people where I'm like, hey, I just enjoy watching. He could be doing, people shitted on him as Bruce Wayne. I enjoyed it, right? I enjoyed it. I just enjoy him on screen, but I understand where everybody's coming from in terms of they're trying to envision Bruce Wayne, and they have an idea of Bruce Wayne and Batman, whatever. He might not have fit that, but I was glad that I got to see Affleck as Bruce Wayne. As good or bad as that is.
I love that you brought that up, because one movie that I hummed and hawed big time over putting on the list was The Batman. And I thought Pattinson did a great job. It didn't make the list. Ultimately, I just found it was just too much of a slog. It was, I love the atmosphere. I love the design. I love the cast and the characters. But it just, by the end of it, I was just it just didn't, do it for me in that way. But hot take, Ben Affleck, best Batman. I'm not kidding around. Not best Batman film, but to me, I think
Sorry.
his interpretation of Batman, I'm not necessarily Bruce Wayne.
Okay,
Batman,
I was going to clarify. Yeah.
In the costume, if I could have any version, if it was like I can get Michael Keaton to do another Batman, or I could get Christian Bale to do Batman 4, or like I would take whether it's Justice League 2 or a solo Affleck Batman movie over anything right now.
I would be very excited to see a solo Affleck Batman movie, and I think you're right. I think him as Batman. I don't think I can say hot take as in the best Batman, but I think that it would definitely be very entertaining to watch him fleshed out as Batman in full. A lot of times, and I don't know if it was the movie itself, but he looked like he was disinterested in being Bruce Wayne. Like it was almost like he was tired, like he was exhausted being on set. Like it didn't feel like he had any, like he needed to do, I don't know, like take a shot of adrenaline and do a line of coke or something to like, you know, get back up.
It did feel like choosing to do that. It cost him more than what he wanted. It was almost like I can't not do this. Kevin Smith probably like, you know, just in his ear. Well, I don't know if they were friends at that time. They had a falling out, and then they became friends again. But whether they were friends or not, Affleck could hear Kevin Smith like, "How the fuck can you not be Batman?" And it just like the smoking Affleck like meme. It's like that's the personification of his time as Batman. And I know there's people that will be listening to this. They'll be fucking freaking out and smashing their laptops when they hear me say Affleck best Batman, but I hear what you're saying, and I do think that came through in when he was as Bruce Wayne, but as Batman, the way he moved, the way he felt in the suit, the way I agree, the vibe of the character was just beyond anything else I'd seen, and it felt the most comic accurate to me for my history of Batman.
And this is the point that I'm talking about, when you have to kind of find like the beauty in even the bad movies, and you know, Batman versus Superman would have gotten, you know, it probably wasn't the best reviewed movie or wasn't the, you know, most acclaimed movie, but there were these moments, exactly what you're talking about, where you got to see a little bit more of a, you know, fleshed out character for Batman in the bat suit with Affleck, and some of those scenes and some of those moments were they were fantastic. It was really, really entertaining to watch. It was almost better than watching anything that had Henry Cavill's Superman in that movie, and it left you with wanting more of Affleck as Batman. Affleck as Bruce Wayne with what's his name? Alfred. What's his name? Jeremy Irons, right? And that was a really interesting take on Alfred, and then that, like, he's not in the mansion anymore, and it's like this submerged, like, underwater condo, whatever he had. I mean, there's a lot of like really cool things for Batman, but yeah, very, very interesting that you don't have the Batman in your top 10.
Yeah, no,
wow. Okay.
I couldn't find a way to get it in there, and it's like I'm interested in the sequel. Like I'm not like, and again, I think Pattinson did a good job. I'd like Matt Reeves as a director. I thought he created a fairly like new Batman experience that felt applicable to the character. But I think I don't want to get off too much of a tangent here. I know we've talked about this, but it's like the one thing that drives me fucking nuts about like Warner Brothers. And you know, we'll see what James Gunn does. But it's like, why can there not be a universe where you could do a Michael Keaton Batman movie, where you could do a Justice League 2 and still have Matt Reeves the Batman, and they could come out like every other year? Like, well, why can all of those versions of Batman not? Why do we just have to like reboot everything and just have the one version? It's like we are beyond that now. We're multiversal, and we have the ability to, hopefully when it comes to Marvel, like have a Tobey Spider-Man 4 and have an Amazing Spider-Man 3 with Andrew Garfield, and like, I don't understand why we can't do that. I feel like we're beyond that point of needing to have one person in the cape and cowl at the same time. Audiences are ready for that. We're intellectual enough to handle that. It's just
do you think it dilutes the IP or the intellectual property by having both of them? Like do you think you can do too much of it?
I think with some characters you can, but with Spider-Man and Batman and like those stalwarts, nope. I think if you have a calendar year that has no Batman movie and no Spider-Man movie, that's a fucking weak year. It's like 2022, no Star Wars movie in the calendar, fucking weak. Like you need to have some of those like tent poles in a way that's like, you got a year that's filled with like all these B-level like Marvel films, and it's like you could tell like people, that's when like the fatigue sets in, right? It's like it's all of that where it's like, yeah, maybe one of them's really good and one of them's like okay, and then a couple of them are bad, but it's I don't think there's been a point where anyone ever really had like Spider-Man or Batman fatigue. The only time they get fatigued is when they're shit. And when they're shit, that's when you just stop making that version, right? Like everyone would be in line for a elder Keaton Batman. Everyone would be in line right now. If you look at the way the fans have supported Cavill and Snyder, with the Snyder cut and everything, everyone would be in line for that. That movie would make a fuck ton of money, a new Affleck Batman. And people supported the new Reeves one. But it's like, if Reeves comes out and bombs Batman 2 and makes like some like Mr. Freeze, some, woke character that like it doesn't act in the interest of Mr. Freeze, and like people fall off patents, and then it's like, okay, that patent, but then you have the other one. You don't have to go searching for this other Batman. You can let it happen organically, right? So
I think there's a hype machine or marketing machine built behind movies to extract the maximum dollar. And I think that if you have two competing interests, even though they might not be coming out at the same time, I feel like when you're trying to, coming back to your point, asking the audience the question of where they're going to spend their hard-earned money on what movie choice, I think that you end up diluting it by having two competing superheroes in your head.
So you think that there's a possibility that there's a moviegoer out there that's like stumbles into the cinema and sees, oh, there's Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 3 with Andrew Garfield, and you're like, well, I like Spider-Man, but you know what? I'll just wait until fucking next year and see Spider-Man 4 with Tobey. And
no, I think he goes, well, there's a Spider-Man around all the time. Freaking, I don't really care about Spider-Man. He's in my face all the time because there's this guy, there's that guy. I'm going to go watch something else. That's what I think. I think the real fan or the true fan sees both. I think the average person, and I feel like the studios rely on this kind of average moviegoer, I think if you dilute it in their mind, they don't buy that ticket.
Well, sees something else or sees nothing. Because that's a difference, right? If there's something else, then like that's not an inherently bad thing either. Because right now the problem is that people are only seeing those movies and they're not seeing the other films, and that's why we're getting like such a collection of dog shit. Because it's like, well, those movies don't make money, so it takes only the most passionate people, and to be quite honest, like actors that keep them alive, that want to do those films, but. That wouldn't be inherently problematic to me. It's just if they see that or nothing. But I feel like I think movies are good, whether it's a good year or bad year, inherently, if you're an average moviegoer, you're probably going to the cinema X amount of times a year and you're just seeing a movie that's on, right? It's not like, oh, I'm gonna go this much more because I'm really interested in like this, and then on a down year they'll go that much less. Like it just spreads it out. But I mean, I'm so far removed from being that kind of customer that I acknowledge that I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I think you definitely have a point. I think they can definitely milk that IP, and give the fans what they want in terms of multiple people donning the cape or taking over the role. Um, I think I think that it's too far ahead. Maybe you could do something like you have like a HBO TV version of it, and then a movie release, kind of like what Star Wars is doing with the shows versus the big movie releases, where you can kind of still tell a story. Um, but yeah, no, I think for the fan, it would be great to have that choice. I just don't think I just don't see them doing it anytime soon.
I
Like,
actually think it increases the recovery factor because think about it this way, right? If you get one Batman movie every 3 to 4 years, okay, and you're like a Batman fan, and you wait 3 to 4 years, and you're following the production online, and you're watching the trailers, and you like get there first night, and that movie blows, like your level of feeling assaulted by that movie is going to be so much higher, where it's like, oh well, it sucked that wasn't as good, but hey, this movie's on the horizon. I can turn that chapter much quicker than being fixated on like when you have the bombs, because you're gonna have bombs, you're gonna have ones that suck, it's just inevitable. uh you hope.
but let me ask you a question. Do you get to a point where me and you are having a conversation and you're going, "Hey, did you see this Batman movie?" I'm like, "Oh no, I completely missed that Batman movie because there's another Batman movie coming out next year. So it doesn't even matter that I watched that movie. It was bad anyway because that's what I heard about it. And I'll watch the one next year." And all of a sudden, you've got that dilution where it just I don't care if there's going to be another one next year. So what if I missed it?
But it's a
And
completely different kind of movie, like with a completely different character, completely different director. It's a different version. So it's like maybe there will be certain versions that don't appeal to you specifically, but I don't.
like imagine there was a Batman movie. I knew there was a Batman movie with Michael Keaton this year, and then for example next year there was going to be another Batman movie, and I missed Robert Pattinson's Batman, and I know there's going to be a Batman movie every one or the other years, and I'm just going, yeah, I just never got around to seeing that. It's almost like
But
it's almost like
if you didn't see it, we're gonna be talking, and I'm gonna be like, "Are you kidding me? Like, you didn't see that? Are you fucking foolish, buddy? Like, get out there."
yes.
And if it's not worth seeing, then it just goes away. But it's less of a financial failure because guess what? They made the money on the other one, so it's not as problematic.
It's like, am I upset that I haven't seen Jurassic Park Dominion? No, because I feel like there's another Jurassic Park coming out, etc. Am I upset that I probably will not go to see the next Transformers in theater, and I'll probably end up watching it at home? Why? Because it's almost, I don't care anymore, and
But
I
those are
don't
very
want.
peripheral franchises. Jurassic Park and Transformers is not the same as Batman and Spider-Man. It's not.
It's not. But at one point when Transformers came out the first time, I would have said this is the first one. It's like for even the second one, yeah, up to even the third one, I was like, whoa, I can't wait for the next Transformers. And then it just kept coming out, and it was just like, okay,
But make no mistake about it, that Transformers movie, it's gonna make a lot of money. Like,
yeah,
even if it sucks,
oh
it's
yes,
gonna make,
one
it's
thousand
gonna make a lot.
percent,
Now, could you
1000.
make a Transformers movie every year? Probably not. But again, those movies have so much less meat on their bones than some of those other films do that could actually justify
But
it.
imagine there was competing Transformers movies. Like there was Transformers, like I don't know, Beast Wars or whatever have you, and then like the regular Transformers, and like now they've got like the Transformers Dinobots, and you had these three competing universes. Nobody would care. You would just dilute it. Like you're just like, I'm sure it would still make money, but you would have lost. the soul. You would have sold out to the devil. And I think there's a fine line between giving the fan, because I think you're coming from an absolute.
Who would be directing those Transformers movies? Like fucking, like it would be No Name Schnooks who did like Transporter movies and stuff like that. Whereas like who's directing the next Batman movie? Guess what? It's gonna be somebody big time that is like,
if you have it as a solo reboot release, that Warner Brothers goes and finds the next director and the next script. But the moment you have it as, okay, well, we've kind of sold out and we're going to create a whole bunch of IP around it because we're going to milk it for everything we've got, then
no.
You're just going to find, then it's going to come to a point where you're going to find some Joe Schmo.
I don't think so with those properties specifically, because it's about who you're working with, right? So it's like, okay, well, first of all, it's Snyder, right? So if they put a bank truck in front of Snyder, he's doing that. Almost any person who's a fan of Batman is going to want to do a Michael Keaton Batman movie.
And no, I'm not saying. I'm saying maybe for the first three you might have that reaction, and maybe for the next three you might have that reaction.
You're not going to make 10 Nolan Batman movies. You know what I mean?
I'm not saying
you
Nolan,
might make one or two more, and then like, you know, by that time you'll have moved on a little bit. But like,
yeah, I think there's. I mean, we can kind of go in circles around this, but I think there's definitely a audience fatigue standpoint that they got to be cognizant of. I think that there's a balance for sure. I think that you can increase it up just a little bit with and it kind of go to exactly what you're talking about, without completely losing, without selling the farm, right? So like you can go, okay, I think we can do a Michael Keaton sequel to Batman 2. Right, and it's that's coming out, and then the Robert Pattinson storyline is still going, and I think in that scenario you can do it, because it would be the same as Snyder. Let's say it would be the same. Let me ask you what the difference over here is. This is an interesting point you brought up. Snyder does a sequel to Justice League. It has Joker in it, and the Joker 2 comes out as well.
But like Joker 2 is coming out when you literally had Barry Keoghan as Joker in the deleted scene or whatever in the Batman. So it's like, well, it wasn't a problem there, but why is it a problem there?
Exactly. Right. And if anybody should milk that, it's probably DC.
They can't do what Marvel has done. Like the ship has sailed on that. So do something different. This is that different. Like
I agree with you.
Like Marvel has made it so that you can make an obscure character and it's going to make $100 million in opening weekend, right? Is anyone going to see Martian Manhunter opening weekend? Like, no, it's not happening. And to try to get yourself to a place where that's going to happen is so foolhardy. It's to think that you can replicate when so many like the bodies that are lined of failures from people that have tried to replicate what Kevin Feige has done is it's endless. I think like I have so much low tolerance for people that like trash Marvel cinema, as much as mediocre and formulaic as they can be at times. It's like what he's done, man. There's filmmakers out there that would turn their nose up that haven't even come close to anything like that. To have 30 films with that level of connectivity and planning and consistency, and the way the films morph and change, and there's like films that on the surface don't appear that valuable, but then become much more valuable based on things that happen later, is just
and I think
it doesn't get enough appreciation in industry, in my opinion.
And I think DC trying to replicate it is probably it's a bad idea. I don't think they can I don't think they should try to replicate it. I don't think the whole concept of, okay, let's do multiple kind of standalone movies on like these Justice League characters and then bring them together for Justice League and then expect the same amount of success that the Avengers or the way he set it up. I think they have to go down the route of, and I think they're maybe getting there, or they're maybe trying to understand that they have different characters, they have different universe, and they need to go down the route of the Batman or Joker, where you do these kind of really artsy takes or these really new groundbreaking takes on these characters, right? And you, the thing is, you don't want to be you want to be first at something rather than trying to copy or emulate something else, because everybody can see right through it, right? Like
Sony, they're so pathetic and sad. Like, let's make a Morbius movie and a Craven movie and like have it somehow make this like Sinister Six, or who the fuck knows what they're actually trying. I don't even think they know. Like, they're just so lost and sad, right? And like they could really do so many cool things with the IP that they do have, but they're just, you know, lots. So anyways, we're getting on a tangent. We'll talk about Marvel a little bit more a little bit later as we break down that. But number 7, we talked about Batman, Kevin Smith. I got Clerks 3 in there. It's, again, objectively a pretty bad movie, but it's a Kevin Smith movie, and it's emotional, and you know, knowing what he went through in his life to get to that point of making that movie, it's hard not to be a little bit heartwarmed by it.
Okay. You know what? That is very important for me to. I'm literally writing down your top 10 list, because at the moment I haven't seen any of it.
Wow. And I'm not. It's not like I'm going off the cuff here with like these deep fucking indie like gems. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty. Like, it gets a little bit more as we go up, but. Next up, I got Glass Onion on there, which is, you know,
I heard good things.
Interesting for me in that, like, obviously, we could do a whole podcast on Rian Johnson and our thoughts on him.
I like to pretend when I watched the first Knives Out that it had nothing to do with him, and then when I watched the second one, I also like to pretend that this movie had nothing to do with him, because the mere thought of his name brings anger and disappointment and frustration. So I try
we just passed the 5-year anniversary, and I still got PTSD from it. But it's like, honestly, I still like the guy. I still like his films. I'll go and spend the money. Like, just please don't touch anything Star Wars ever again. But yeah, I got to give it up. I found it, you know, quite interesting and a social commentary that was of value in where we're at, and just, you know, he's created a great character in Benoit Blanc, and there was a fun film, and it took it up a notch from Knives Out. I still think Knives Out was slightly better. But you know, I'll give it up to Glass Onion. 6, one of my favorite films of the last handful of years, Uncut Gems, and Adam Sandler done it again with Hustle. Like, I love the vibe of that movie. I thought it was a great performance on his part. Didn't try to do too much, but it was just a really like nice, lovely film for anyone that's got any interest or passion about basketball, as he clearly does in his life. Okay, we'll get into the top 5. I'll finish my list, and then you can do yours, I guess.
Okay.
Number 5 actually is perfect, because the film that we saw together, that I generally enjoyed, had somewhat mixed feelings about, but, you know, knowing what Spielberg tried to accomplish, and going out on the festival circuit when a guy like that, and never has to do that in a million years, and me and you were, you know, right there, and Spielberg's on the stage. It's like, I don't really get starstruck often. That was
very cool.
sense that was just like, fuck, Spielberg's there talking about his little indie movie that he's made at this point. It was, I never thought I would get to experience that. So Fablemans is in there at number 5.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of a slow burn that led up to that, you know,
I enjoyed it
in the end with David Lynch, but it was hard not to see how much he loved cinema and watching that movie.
Yeah.
And it's infectious.
Agree.
Number 4, I love Martin McDonagh. This to me was probably his worst film, and it was amazing and bizarre at the same time. But Banshees of Inisherin, you know, Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson, just, it was such a perplexing like dynamic, and it wasn't what you thought it was going to be, but it had to make it up there for me, just in terms of like the sheer uniqueness and the great performances, and just it was a film I thought about for quite a while afterwards, and you know, that counts for a lot in my book.
Okay.
Number 3, it was a movie that kind of got dumped onto Netflix, and no one really talked about it, or like it didn't really get any attention, but it had amazing performances from Jessica Chastain and Eddie Redmayne. It's called The Good Nurse. It was based on some true events, and I found it to be incredibly captivating. I thought it stopped a little too short, because it's one of those movies that like you watch and it just makes you like so angry at the world, and like the villain in that movie was not Eddie Redmayne, right? The villain in that movie was the system and how it fails us, like I say us, like, you know, the American healthcare system, but to an extent in Canada as well, in different ways. That was the villain of the film, and I think it could have been like more attacked in terms of like where you go after that. Like it was an interesting story and it happened, but nothing really changed from it. But it was really powerful. Number 2, it was a movie I was super hyped for, and it didn't let me down at all. It was just like a blast in every way. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent with Nick Cage.
Okay.
I just fucking love that movie. You know, them sitting around crying, watching Paddington 2, and like all the wackiness of it. It was the perfect meta movie. I've always loved Nick Cage from a very young age. It just, yeah, the renaissance of Nick Cage, or whatever they call it, the Cageissance, or that there's a term for it, I think, but I love that film. It's one of those, it's probably the most rewatchable film on the entire list, that it's like I could watch that movie probably once a week for the rest of my life and I wouldn't get sick of it.
Okay.
Last film, he's a guy I saw Force Majeure several years ago. It was like a sneak preview film at TIFF where you didn't know going into it what it was, and they eventually remade it, and it was fucking horrible. And it should have been way better than what it was, but it was like, that was my first sort of sniff onto him, and it's like everything he's done since then is just taking it up a notch. And what Ruben Östlund accomplished with Triangle of Sadness, that movie just like knocked my socks off in the best way possible. It was hilarious. It was poignant. It was ridiculous. It pushed limits, and I couldn't think of any other reason not to put that movie as my most enjoyable film experience of the year. I walked out of that screening just.
So what is the movie? Sorry, I didn't catch it.
Triangle of Sadness.
Triangle of Sadness. And this is your favorite movie of 2022.
Yeah.
Okay.
I gotta give it up. He's one of those directors that's just pushing boundaries and having fun, and you know, seeing what he can get away with. And I think he won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, which is I think it's actually not the first time he's won that. But I think also there was some screenings where like there was a bunch of rich people I heard, and like they got up and left because they were like so offended by the film. And that could be like one of those anecdotes that never actually happened. I don't know for sure that it did, but there was an electricity at that screening based on the journey, and it's one of those films that I'll recommend to anyone. It's like if you haven't seen that this year, you're
I hope you're going to publish this list. I think it's important, especially I didn't get to see a lot of movies, but I look at your top 10 list and I go, okay, you know what, I have a list of movies to kind of watch. Because I have not seen any of them.
Literally, no. You've seen at least one. Like you saw Fableman, so
I saw. Sorry, yes. Outside of Fableman's, I have not seen any of them.
You should be kicked off the podcast just for that fucking offense alone. Listen, again, it's like you got a top 10 with Jurassic Park and Deep Water on it, and like, you know, like, come on, like, what else are you seeing? Like, I guess no, we know what you're seeing. You're seeing fucking Moonfall and The Samaritan and shit like that. That's, you know, I said at the beginning, didn't I, that you know, Dad likes terrible movies. Well, you know,
wait till my I don't have a top 10 list clearly.
Can I actually like take a shot at predicting your list?
Okay. Yeah.
Can I like just
go ahead.
pull up like, you know, the list of 22 movies and be like, what is on here?
I mean, you'll definitely. I think you'll probably get, I would say, 4 out of 5.
Okay.
And I don't have a top 10, it's a top 5.
Okay. This is a film that wasn't on my list, but it's on a lot of people's lists, and I did generally like it. And I feel like maybe it snuck onto yours, and at least it wouldn't be like a terrible addition. So I'm giving you a little bit of credit with this one, but Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Never seen it, never heard of it. Okay, what's that one? Everything Everywhere All at Once.
God, oh my God. What have I done? Like I couldn't find somebody fucking more like.
Well, wait till you hear my top 5.
I'm like literally embarrassing myself with the association here.
Now, keep in mind the only caveat before I go through this list is you know, I have a list of 10 movies here now because I've seen The Fableman. So I have your list of the 9 that I haven't seen. Plus now you've given Everything Everywhere All at Once, right? So considering that I haven't seen those movies, and so they could easily make my top 5 or top 10, right? So I'm going to throw that as a little bit of a caveat, and I'm going to go right to my number 5 most enjoyed movie of 2022, and that would be The Gray Man. You know, it was one of those scenarios again where I originally, when I started, you know, when like stupid movies like The Notebook and all of that
came about. Trashing The Notebook.
I mean, it was just, I get the hype, but it was just whatever. But one of the things
like, whether you liked it or not, it wasn't stupid. Like, let's not be, you know, one of the great romance movies of our generation.
Sure. What was really captivating was, I think, it's weird to say, it's one of those things like we're talking about Affleck. I really enjoy watching Gosling on screen, and especially when he does nothing. That is my favorite part of Gosling, when he just sits there with a stupid look on his face, and it's just captivating. And I feel like things that he does, regardless of how good or bad the movie, like a plot is or the writing is, whatever have you, he holds your attention, and that charisma on screen is really enjoyable to watch. So I really enjoyed that movie.
I would agree with that. I think, you know, that's basically Drive, right? Like, that's his entire character in Drive. And I did like Gray Man. I thought I could tell right away. I mean, I like Chris Evans, obviously, like in a villain role, different. I like the Russos. There was just something off about the way the movie was cut. that just made it feel like it was missing something. And I think people like went into that being like, oh, it should be this, and it felt like it was this, so it ended up not getting too much attention. But interesting choice. It wouldn't have been on my list, but I did enjoy the experience, and I agree with you about Gosling. I think you look at like when he nails it, it's like with Blade Runner 2049, and like he is in that upper echelon class for me, where it's like almost anything he does is worth worth your dollar.
Number 4, Uncharted.
Wow, this is degrading into something just that I didn't see coming. Like
once again, same thing with both Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg. Just really enjoy seeing them on screen, and really enjoyed watching one of my favorite games of all time come to life. And he might not have been the Nathan Drake that is in the games, but to kind of just be part of that universe and see that on screen was super enjoyable. It was a pleasure to go see it. I wouldn't say that it's like if the game doesn't exist, that's a very mediocre movie. But the only reason it's on the list is the entire kind of saga associated with the game and the movie and the anthology altogether. So that would definitely be on.
I sort of understand that. I mean, I played the PS5 remaster before watching the film, and I was rooting for the film. Like I went and saw it in theaters, and I wanted to like it because I did enjoy the games. I didn't play all of them, but I did play a couple of them. But it was just what was weird to me was it was like they took a bit from every game, and just made it into this one ball of Unchartedness, where it's like they shouldn't have done that. That to me was the failure, where I thought most people that liked the game would destroy them for that, but it actually, like, most people just wanted to see like the vibe of Uncharted on the screen. They got it. It was enough. It was, and
I mean, it didn't, what it did, it was a cop-out in the sense that it's not like it pushed a new storyline. Really what it did was it took some of the best highlight, because one of the greatest things about the game was the set piece sequences, which were almost like an action movie when you're playing the game. It was those set pieces, like the takeoff scene where you're kind of like hanging from the plane as tanks and things are, so those were like those set pieces. And they were, when playing the game, it was like, wow, this would be a really cool movie. And they just kind of mishmash that all together, rather than coming up with new ideas. And yes, it's like, oh, that's kind of a cop out, but at the same time, it's like, whoa, this is really cool to see on screen, like live action. Right. Whereas if they did it again, or if there was an Uncharted sequel and if something similar was done, it would just be the biggest flop of all time, because you're like, okay, I want to see you push the boundary to something new. Right.
Well, even if you had just like remade the games in like maybe the first film is game 1 and game 2, and then there's some sort of linear progression there.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was a stinger on that. Like I think they wanted to do a part 2. I don't know if they're going to, or if it's officially dead, or if they're just waiting to see how things go with Holland and Spider-Man or what. But I'm not rushing out to see that sequel. I'd rather see Holland do something else. But
number 3 would be the Batman. I don't see how I can take that off my list. Watching the Batman on screen in general, it was just entertaining. Colin Farrell did an incredible job. I think to take it, not have it on your top 10 list is absolute blasphemy. Like, I understand not having it on your top 5 list, but the fact that it didn't make your list altogether, that is really surprising to me. But it is what it is. Number two on my list would be number one if Top Gun didn't exist. So I'll just kind of cut to Top Gun being number one because we've already kind of discussed it. But number two on my list was a movie that I really, really enjoyed, and I recommend it to everybody. And it was Prey. And and I love the Predator saga in general, but that was a really, really entertaining movie. It had kind of like Mel Gibson Apocalypto vibes, combined with like the Predator franchise, and it was just flat out entertainment from beginning to end. And I'll put that as my second favorite movie of the year.
Well, that's the only one on your list that I haven't seen. I have heard good things about it. I do like the Predator franchise, at least as far as Predator 1 and 2 is concerned. Everything after that, I could kind of take or leave, obviously. But Predator 1 and 2, they have a place in my heart. Had those like VHS tapes at the cottage and played them many times. And they don't fucking make movies like Predator 1 anymore. You know what I mean? Like those just do not exist.
No, they don't.
They're long gone, and I don't know if they'll ever be back. But it's one of those, like, I haven't got around to it. I'm not actively avoiding it, but
I mean, it's definitely a good if you have nothing to do, and like I said, you want to enjoy a good hour and a half by yourself, and just watch a good movie. I know kind of your movie taste. I think my movie taste. I don't think you're gonna walk out of there and change your top 10 list and include Prey in it by any means. But I think that you'll definitely walk out and go, hey, you know what, this is a good movie.
I think the barrier for success in that, it's like, would you say it's the third best Predator movie of all time, including the AVP movies? And if the answer is yes, that's really probably a good thing. And if the answer is no, then you almost probably lost me.
Well, Predator 1 and Predator 2 are I mean, they're great movies, but they are also dated a little bit. So I would put this on par, if not just a little bit better than Adrian Brody's Predators, which I thought was actually a really good movie. And everything else outside of that is just garbage. Like, there's Predator 1, Predator 2, Predators, and Prey. That is the only thing worth watching in that entire universe that's actually good. All the AVP stuff, it wasn't. I mean, after watching Prey, I went ahead and watched in sequence every Predator movie in that following 2 weeks after watching Prey.
You're missing.
So I'm fresh.
You're missing the Predator, though, right? Like the 2018.
That was so bad that I have completely forgotten about it. That was really bad. It was terrible. That would have been probably worse than AVP 2, which I didn't know existed. But it did.
I don't remember if it's AVP 1 or 2, but I have like the DVD box set of like of a bunch of like, I have the Aliens one, I have the Predator one, and I don't know if it was separate or whatever, but I was doing a rewatch of like all of them at some point in the last couple of years, and the quality on that like Blu-ray transfer is so bad. It's like the movie's completely dark. Like you can't like pick out almost anything. It's like you're watching like a bootleg copy of again, maybe it was the way I think I was dumb enough to go see that movie in the theater, and I don't remember it being like that bad, but it's almost borderline unwatchable how dark it is.
It is. And the Predator was even like, that's probably, I would say, I would put The Predator as the worst movie in the franchise, with AVP 2 as the second worst and AVP as the third worst, and then you would kind of get, but I would highly recommend Prey if you haven't seen it.
Are they doing a Prometheus like trilogy. Is that like dead? Because I actually liked Alien Covenant. Prometheus pissed me off a lot, although I loved what it wanted to be. But
I
is
think there was
that
a
like
Prometheus sequel. Um, I'm looking at it, but I think it was penned. I think they had issues. Um, because isn't Alien Covenant supposed to be the sequel to Prometheus? It is the sequel to Prometheus. So there's a Prometheus 3.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's right. Covenant is a sequel to Prometheus because it's when they leave, and then there's supposed to be a sequel to that. I don't know if it's gonna. I really enjoyed the like Fassbender in that entire both in Prometheus and both in Covenant. I think he stole the show, and I really enjoy those movies. And I hope to see him again, but I don't know.
I would be like way down for a third film in that series. I know Covenant again was panned, but I actually thought it was a huge like course correct from Prometheus. And yeah, like Fassbender, he's in that core of like if Fassbender's in it,
Yeah,
I'm probably game. It'd be hard pressed for him to make a movie where I'm just like I don't. Actually, I think he did make a movie within the last like couple years. It was one in the snow, and I never saw it. And
who?
Fassbender. It was kind of like a horror movie in the snow. I'm struggling to the Snowman. It was 2017. It actually was the last movie he did, I think. Um, After Alien Covenant, maybe.
Yeah, you're right.
So yeah, it's I mean, I guess he proved me wrong there, but was that even any good? Like, was I don't know what that got rated or.
Well, it's on my list now. The
I'm just looking
Snowman.
at the posters. Soon, the first snow will fall, and the hunt for a killer begins. Michael Fassbender, the snow.
Mm. You know what I'm really excited. Oh, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm gonna definitely get around to watching it. Is A Violent Night.
Can't say I have a ton of interest in watching that, but I do like David Harbour. If someone came and told me like, "Oh man, that was fun," like it was,
Yeah.
but it seems to me it's like just one of those like extreme Christmas movies that's like horror-ish, and I just again I turn my nose up at horror for the most part. I just watched The Menu the other day, and it was like yeah, I'd heard really good things, and it was great performances, and like the vibe from what they were going for. I think Mark Mylod directed. He did a bunch of episodes of Entourage. He did Game of Thrones, and I'm kind of interested in him as a director. But it just didn't land for me, where it's like it was the anti-Pig. One of my favorite movies from 2021 was Pig with Nicolas Cage, and it was like everything that like Pig was, this movie maybe like wanted to be but wasn't. Two completely different genres, two with outcomes, but both sort of centered around like culinary art. But yeah, I don't know, I stick my nose up at horror most of the time, and very rarely like does it for me.
Yeah.
That it just feels so cheap. Of like I'm just trying to elicit like I mean, I guess it's just a different kind of emotion. Whereas like I want movies to pull on my heart and my mind, and this is just like pulling on like body reflex almost.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, it's very rare to see a horror movie that you kind of get engrossed in the story and you care about the characters and what happens to them, as opposed to like here's a premise and we're gonna try to just get you out of your seat.
get
But
your adrenaline pumping so that you
yeah.
can make out or fuck
Yeah.
afterwards, or
Yeah,
uh,
and then there's these horror movies that have been recently coming out that I get into arguments with, and I think there's one that I consistently get into an argument with my siblings. And what movie was that? And it wasn't horror as much as it was just trying to make you really uncomfortable. I'm trying to find it. Um, Movies in the last, and I think you've seen it. And I don't consider like the Halloween sequels horror, just as a Hereditary. Have you seen Hereditary?
I have not seen it, but I have read a write-up on it that sort of like shows how it goes beyond horror, and it did captivate me a little bit in terms of like what it was trying to do. I don't know exactly like the full story, but it was the piece was written well enough that it was like, okay, maybe I had written this movie off, maybe I'll watch it like under the right circumstances.
I would be very interested to hear your opinion of Hereditary, because every time I have a discussion with anybody, it's like I'm on like I hated the movie, but I'm on completely kind of different kind of wavelengths. But I'm looking at this list, and I'll tell you some of the movies that I mean, I don't know if you consider this horror, but A Quiet Place.
I did watch both A Quiet Places. I don't think I could probably put that under thriller versus
Okay. Okay. What about Get Out?
No, I don't think I would consider that to be horror either.
Okay. Hush. Have you seen Hush?
No, I don't think I have.
Okay. So that was a good movie, but I would also put that under thriller, kind of. What else? Have you seen? I'll tell you what a movie I really enjoyed. Don't Breathe.
I have not.
You put that on your list to watch.
Now, you know what we're going to do later in this podcast as an exercise? Like, once every so often, the homework or like what is given out, it's like I have to choose a movie that you have to sit down and watch no matter what, and you got to give like a little book report, and conversely, I got to sit and watch some piece of shit that you're gonna like that I would watch. No circumstances would I otherwise watch, but because you're forcing me to do it, I'll sit down and do it, and I'll come on here and I'll just eviscerate it. I
think that's good. I think it definitely broadens each of our horizons in terms of what we're watching. So I think that's a good idea.
Well, it'll broaden one of our horizons. It'll maybe broaden my vocabulary. That's about all I can say. So, we're gonna wrap episode 1 here. We're gonna come back for episode 2, and we're gonna talk about the state of Star Wars, the state of Marvel and the MCU, and kind of dive into the year that was and the year ahead. But thank you for listening. This is the premiere episode of the Mustard Movie Club podcast, and we hope we'll continue to have you back. Cheers.
Yeah, looking forward to it, man. Thank you for having me.